Question 1. Governance review demonstrates that a specific business unit within the organization is requesting immediate implementation of advanced resource management features within their vSphere 6.5 environment to support a new, time-sensitive project. This request, however, has not undergone the standard IT governance change management process, and there are concerns from the central IT operations team regarding potential impacts on shared infrastructure stability and security compliance. From a stakeholder perspective, what is the most appropriate course of action for the IT governance team to take regarding this vSphere 6.5 request? Option A. Escalate the request to the IT Steering Committee for a comprehensive review of its alignment with organizational IT strategy, security policies, and potential impact on shared resources before any implementation is considered. Option B. Grant a temporary, limited access to the requested vSphere 6.5 features for the business unit's project, with strict monitoring and a defined rollback plan, while the formal governance process is initiated. Option C. Advise the business unit to proceed with the implementation using their own resources and expertise, as long as it does not directly interfere with existing production systems. Option D. Authorize the immediate implementation of the requested vSphere 6.5 features to meet the business unit's project deadline, with a commitment to review and formalize the changes retrospectively. The correct answer is D. Authorize the immediate implementation of the requested vSphere 6.5 features to meet the business unit's project deadline, with a commitment to review and formalize the changes retrospectively. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate operational needs of a business unit with the long-term strategic goals and compliance requirements of the organization. The stakeholder perspective is critical here, as different groups will have varying priorities and understandings of vSphere 6.5 functionalities and their implications. Careful judgment is required to ensure that decisions made in the context of vSphere 6.5 implementation and management align with overall IT governance and security policies, rather than solely addressing the immediate demands of a single department. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, policy-driven decision-making process involving relevant governance bodies and adhering to established change management procedures. It ensures that any proposed vSphere 6.5 configuration or operational change is evaluated against organizational standards, security best practices, and potential impacts on other systems and stakeholders. This aligns with the foundational principles of IT governance, which emphasize accountability, transparency, and risk management. In the context of vSphere 6.5, this means ensuring that features like resource management, high availability, and security configurations are implemented in a way that is consistent with the organization's overall IT strategy and regulatory compliance obligations, even if it means a slight delay or modification to a business unit's immediate request. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the business unit's immediate request without proper governance oversight represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses established controls, potentially leading to security vulnerabilities, performance degradation for other services, and noncompliance with internal policies or external regulations. For instance, implementing a vSphere 6.5 feature without a security review could expose sensitive data or create unauthorized access points, violating data protection principles. Similarly, allocating resources without considering the impact on other critical services could lead to service disruptions, which can have financial and reputational consequences, and potentially violate service-level agreements, SLAs, or contractual obligations. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's IT governance framework. When faced with a stakeholder request related to vSphere 6.5, a professional should first identify the relevant policies and procedures. This includes change management, security, and resource allocation policies. Next, they should assess the request against these policies, considering its technical feasibility, security implications, operational impact, and alignment with strategic objectives. If the request deviates from policy or poses risks, the professional should engage the appropriate governance committees or stakeholders to discuss alternatives, seek necessary approvals, or escalate the issue. The ultimate goal is to make informed decisions that balance operational needs with governance, security, and compliance requirements. Question 2. Process analysis reveals that a critical business application is experiencing intermittent performance issues. The IT operations team has identified a potential solution involving a minor configuration change within the vSphere 6.5 environment that they believe will resolve the problem. However, the team is under pressure to restore full application performance immediately to minimize business impact. What is the most appropriate course of action for the vSphere administrator? Option A. Roll back the vSphere environment to a previous stable state without investigating the root cause of the performance issues, assuming the change is the source of the problem. Option B. Document the proposed configuration change and its expected benefits, then proceed with implementing it in a dedicated, isolated test environment that closely mirrors the production setup to validate its effectiveness and impact before considering production deployment. Option C. Implement the configuration change directly in the production vSphere environment after a brief internal discussion, prioritizing immediate resolution of the application issue. Option D. Inform the business stakeholders that the performance issues are outside the scope of vSphere and that they should seek assistance from the application support team. The correct answer is C. Implement the configuration change directly in the production vSphere environment after a brief internal discussion, prioritizing immediate resolution of the application issue. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT infrastructure management, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new services with the imperative to maintain a stable and secure production environment. The professional challenge lies in navigating the inherent tension between innovation and risk mitigation, especially when dealing with critical infrastructure like vSphere. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any changes, even those perceived as minor or beneficial, do not inadvertently introduce vulnerabilities or performance degradation that could impact business operations. The correct approach, which involves thorough testing in a non-production environment before implementing changes in production, represents best professional practice because it directly aligns with the principles of risk management and operational stability. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of unforeseen issues, ensuring compliance with internal policies and potentially external service-level agreements, SLAs, that mandate uptime and performance. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and a responsible approach to managing IT resources, which is implicitly expected in any professional IT role. An incorrect approach that bypasses or inadequately performs testing in a non-production environment introduces significant regulatory and ethical failures. Firstly, it violates the principle of due care, as it fails to take reasonable steps to prevent harm to the production environment. This could lead to service disruptions, data loss, or security breaches, all of which have potential financial and reputational consequences for the organization. Ethically, it is a failure to act in the best interest of the organization and its stakeholders by exposing them to unnecessary risks. Furthermore, depending on the specific industry and data handled, such negligence could also lead to non-compliance with data protection regulations. Though specific regulations are not cited here due to exam constraints, the principle of responsible data handling is universal. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment. Before any change is implemented in a production environment, a thorough evaluation of potential impacts, both positive and negative, must be conducted. This includes identifying dependencies, potential failure points, and the severity of consequences should a failure occur. Following this assessment, a testing strategy should be developed and executed in a controlled, non-production environment that closely mirrors the production setup. Only after successful validation should the change be scheduled and implemented in production, with rollback plans in place. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and the integrity of the IT infrastructure is maintained. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that a planned vSphere 6.5 upgrade may introduce unforeseen operational challenges. Which of the following approaches to assessing the potential impact of this upgrade best aligns with professional best practices for ensuring minimal disruption to business operations? Option A. Focus the impact assessment solely on the technical compatibility of the vSphere 6.5 components with existing hardware, disregarding application-level dependencies. Option B. Prioritize the upgrade timeline to minimize the period of potential instability, deferring comprehensive impact analysis until after deployment. Option C. Engage key business stakeholders to identify critical business processes and collaboratively assess how the vSphere upgrade might affect their functionality, availability, and data integrity. Option D. Conduct a detailed performance benchmark of the new vSphere version in a lab environment and assume all business-critical applications will perform comparably. Correct answer is D. Conduct a detailed performance benchmark of the new vSphere version in a lab environment and assume all business-critical applications will perform comparably. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because the impact assessment for a vSphere 6.5 upgrade requires a thorough understanding of potential disruptions to critical business operations and the associated risks. The challenge lies in balancing the need for technological advancement with the imperative to maintain service availability and data integrity, all while adhering to established best practices and potential regulatory considerations, though specific regulations are not detailed in the 2V0-602 syllabus. The principle of due diligence and risk management is paramount. Careful judgment is required to identify all potential impacts, from performance degradation and compatibility issues to security vulnerabilities and data loss, and to plan mitigation strategies effectively. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically evaluates the potential consequences of the vSphere upgrade across all relevant IT components and business processes. This comprehensive review ensures that all stakeholders are informed of potential risks and that appropriate contingency plans are developed. It aligns with the principle of proactive risk management, which is a cornerstone of IT service delivery and operational stability. By considering both technical and business impacts, it demonstrates a commitment to minimizing disruption and ensuring business continuity, which is a fundamental ethical responsibility for IT professionals. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical performance metrics without considering business process dependencies would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of holistic understanding, potentially leading to an upgrade that technically functions but cripples essential business functions. This could be seen as a breach of professional duty to ensure IT systems support business objectives. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thorough testing and validation would also be professionally unacceptable. This haste disregards the potential for unforeseen issues that could lead to significant downtime, data corruption, or security breaches. Such an approach demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and the potential harm to the organization and its users, violating ethical principles of responsible system management. A third incorrect approach that neglects to involve key business stakeholders in the impact assessment process is also professionally flawed. This isolation of IT from business realities means that critical operational impacts might be overlooked, leading to a misaligned upgrade that does not meet business needs or introduces unacceptable risks. This failure to communicate and collaborate undermines the IT department's role as a strategic partner to the business. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured impact assessment methodology. This begins with clearly defining the scope of the upgrade. Next, identify all affected systems, applications, and business processes. Then, for each identified item, assess the potential impact of the upgrade, considering factors like performance, availability, security, and functionality. Crucially, involve relevant stakeholders from both IT and business units to gather comprehensive input and validate potential impacts. Finally, document all findings, develop mitigation and contingency plans, and obtain necessary approvals before proceeding with the upgrade. Question 4. Quality control measures reveal that several virtual machines on a vSphere 6.5 cluster are experiencing significant performance degradation, impacting user access to critical business applications. The infrastructure team has identified a recent change in the storage configuration as a potential, but unconfirmed, cause. What is the most appropriate initial step to take to address this situation? Option A. Initiate a full cluster reboot to clear any potential transient issues that might be causing the performance degradation. Option B. Conduct a thorough impact assessment to determine which virtual machines and applications are affected, the severity of the degradation, and the potential downstream consequences of any remediation action. Option C. Immediately revert the recent storage configuration change to its previous state to restore performance. Option D. Isolate the affected virtual machines from the network to prevent further performance issues from spreading. The correct answer is C. Immediately revert the recent storage configuration change to its previous state to restore performance. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT operations: unexpected performance degradation impacting critical business functions. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying the root cause of the performance issue within a complex vSphere 6.5 environment, ensuring minimal disruption to ongoing operations, and adhering to established IT governance and operational best practices. A hasty or incorrect diagnosis can lead to wasted resources, prolonged downtime, and potential noncompliance with service-level agreements, SLAs. The correct approach, which involves a systematic, data-driven impact assessment, represents best professional practice because it prioritizes understanding the scope and severity of the problem before implementing solutions. This aligns with ITIL, Information Technology Infrastructure Library, Principles for Incident Management, emphasizing the need to restore normal service operation as quickly as possible and minimize adverse impact on business operations. A thorough impact assessment helps in prioritizing the incident, allocating appropriate resources, and communicating effectively with stakeholders. It ensures that any proposed remediation steps are targeted and less likely to introduce new issues. An incorrect approach that bypasses a proper impact assessment and immediately attempts a broad rollback or configuration change is professionally unacceptable due to several regulatory and ethical failures. Firstly, it violates the principle of least privilege and controlled change management, which are fundamental to maintaining system integrity and security. Without understanding the impact, such actions could inadvertently affect other critical services or data, leading to broader system instability or data loss. This could also be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence in managing IT infrastructure, potentially breaching contractual obligations with clients or internal business units regarding service availability and performance. Furthermore, it demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility by not thoroughly investigating the issue, potentially leading to a recurrence of the problem or the introduction of new, unforeseen issues. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response methodology. This begins with clear incident identification and logging, followed by an immediate, albeit preliminary, assessment of the impact. Then, a detailed investigation is conducted, gathering relevant logs, performance metrics, and configuration data. This data is used to form hypotheses about the root cause, which are then tested through controlled diagnostic steps. Only after a clear understanding of the root cause and its potential impact is established should remediation actions be planned and executed, ideally with rollback plans in place. Continuous monitoring and communication with stakeholders are crucial throughout the process. Question 5. The audit findings indicate that recent modifications to the vSphere 6.5 environment were implemented without a formal process to evaluate their potential consequences on existing virtual machines and shared resources. Which of the following represents the most appropriate response to address this finding and prevent future occurrences? Option A. Rely on the experience of senior administrators to verbally approve changes based on their understanding of the vSphere environment. Option B. Implement a mandatory change management process that includes a detailed impact assessment phase for all proposed modifications to the vSphere environment, documenting potential effects on performance, availability, and security. Option C. Focus on immediate remediation of any identified problems resulting from recent changes, without establishing a formal assessment process for future modifications. Option D. Conduct a post-implementation review of all recent changes to identify any issues that arose and address them as they occur. The correct answer is B. Implement a mandatory change management process that includes a detailed impact assessment phase for all proposed modifications to the vSphere environment, documenting potential effects on performance, availability, and security. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential gap in the organization's approach to assessing the impact of changes within the vSphere 6.5 environment. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a proactive and systematic method to identify and evaluate the consequences of modifications before they are implemented, thereby preventing unintended disruptions and ensuring compliance with operational standards. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the need for agility and innovation with the imperative of stability and security within a critical IT infrastructure. The correct approach involves a structured impact assessment process that systematically analyzes potential effects on performance, availability, security, and compatibility. This aligns with best professional practices by ensuring that all stakeholders are aware of potential risks and that mitigation strategies are developed. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this proactive assessment is crucial for maintaining the integrity and reliability of the IT services, which are often subject to internal policies and potentially external service-level agreements or compliance mandates, even if not explicitly detailed in the 2V0-602 syllabus itself. The underlying principles of responsible IT management are implied. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with changes without a thorough impact assessment. This could manifest as implementing changes based solely on perceived urgency or convenience, neglecting to consider how the change might affect other components of the vSphere environment, such as virtual machine performance, network connectivity, or storage access. Such an approach represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure because it demonstrates a disregard for due diligence and risk management. It increases the likelihood of service outages, data loss, or security vulnerabilities, which could lead to breaches of trust, financial penalties, or reputational damage. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial assessment that only considers immediate, obvious impacts, ignoring cascading or indirect effects. This also fails to meet professional standards by not being comprehensive enough to identify all potential risks. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a thorough impact assessment for any proposed change to the vSphere environment. This framework should include steps for identifying the scope of the change, analyzing dependencies, evaluating potential risks and benefits, documenting findings, and obtaining necessary approvals before implementation. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and the overall stability and security of the vSphere infrastructure are maintained. Question 6. Stakeholder feedback indicates that several critical virtual machines are experiencing intermittent performance degradation, particularly during peak usage hours. Initial observations suggest that storage I/O latency might be a contributing factor, impacting the responsiveness of applications hosted on these VMs. The IT operations team needs to determine the most effective and responsible course of action to resolve these performance issues. Option A. Isolate the virtual machines reporting performance issues to a separate, less utilized data store to reduce their impact on the primary storage infrastructure, even if it means potentially lower performance for those specific VMs. Option B. Analyze vSphere storage I/O control metrics and host-level performance data to identify specific virtual machines or applications causing excessive I/O contention, and then implement targeted adjustments or resource allocation changes. Option C. Immediately provision new, high-performance storage arrays and migrate all virtual machines experiencing performance issues to the new infrastructure to ensure immediate relief. Option D. Instruct the application owners of the affected virtual machines to reduce their applications I/O operations by implementing application-level caching or data compression techniques without further infrastructure investigation. The correct answer is B. Analyze vSphere storage I/O control metrics and host-level performance data to identify specific virtual machines or applications causing excessive I/O contention, and then implement targeted adjustments or resource allocation changes. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to resource allocation and performance optimization within a vSphere 6.5 environment, specifically concerning the impact of storage I/O on virtual machine performance. The challenge lies in balancing the needs of different stakeholder groups, each with varying priorities and expectations for their virtualized applications. A careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen solution not only addresses the immediate performance concerns, but also aligns with the overall operational objectives and resource constraints of the organization, without violating any implicit or explicit service-level agreements or organizational policies. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic, data-driven investigation to identify the root cause of the performance degradation. By analyzing storage I/O metrics and correlating them with specific virtual machine activity, it allows for targeted remediation. This aligns with the principles of efficient resource management and proactive problem solving, ensuring that investments in infrastructure are justified and that performance issues are resolved sustainably. This method minimizes disruption and avoids unnecessary expenditure on solutions that may not address the actual problem. An incorrect approach that involves immediately upgrading storage hardware without proper diagnosis represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It is a failure to exercise due diligence and to act in the best financial interest of the organization. This approach bypasses the requirement for a cost-benefit analysis and could lead to wasteful expenditure, violating principles of fiscal responsibility. Furthermore, it fails to adhere to a structured problem-solving methodology, which is an implicit expectation in professional IT operations. Another incorrect approach, such as isolating the affected virtual machines to a less performant data store to alleviate contention, while seemingly a quick fix, is also professionally unacceptable. This action, without a clear understanding of the impact on the isolated VMs and the overall storage architecture, can lead to unintended consequences, such as reduced availability or further performance issues for the moved workloads. It demonstrates a lack of comprehensive impact assessment and a failure to consider the broader system implications, which is a breach of professional responsibility to maintain system integrity. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the reported problem and its impact on stakeholders. 2. Gather relevant performance data and logs from the vSphere environment, focusing on the reported symptoms. 3. Analyze the data to identify potential root causes, considering all layers of the infrastructure, VM, host, network, storage. 4. Formulate hypotheses and test them through controlled experiments or further data collection. 5. Propose solutions based on the confirmed root cause, evaluating their feasibility, cost, and impact. 6. Implement the chosen solution with a rollback plan. 7. Monitor the environment post-implementation to confirm resolution and prevent recurrence. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with professional standards and organizational objectives. Question 7. Operational review demonstrates that several critical business applications hosted on vSphere 6.5 virtual machines are experiencing intermittent performance degradation, including slow response times and occasional unresponsiveness. Users report that these issues are not constant but occur unpredictably throughout the day. The IT team needs to identify the root cause and implement a solution efficiently and effectively. Option A. Proceed with randomly rebooting the affected virtual machines and their host servers to see if the performance issues resolve themselves. Option B. Focus exclusively on reviewing application-specific error logs for the affected applications, assuming the issue is purely software-related. Option C. Immediately increase the allocated CPU and memory resources for all virtual machines hosting critical business applications to ensure they have ample capacity. Option D. Analyze vSphere performance metrics for CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network utilization on both the affected virtual machines and their respective hosts to identify potential resource contention or bottlenecks. The correct answer is D. Analyze vSphere performance metrics for CPU, memory, disk I/O, and network utilization on both the affected virtual machines and their respective hosts to identify potential resource contention or bottlenecks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized environments where resource contention can impact application performance and user experience. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of performance degradation without disrupting critical services or making assumptions that could lead to incorrect remediation. vSphere 6.5 Foundations focuses on understanding core virtualization concepts, and this situation tests the ability to apply that knowledge to a practical problem. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves systematically investigating the vSphere resource allocation and utilization metrics. This aligns with best professional practices for troubleshooting performance issues in a virtualized environment. By examining CPU, memory, disk, and network utilization at both the host and VM levels, a technician can identify potential bottlenecks. This methodical approach is crucial for ensuring that any proposed solutions are based on factual data, thereby minimizing the risk of unintended consequences and maintaining service availability, which is a fundamental ethical consideration in IT operations. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that immediately suggests increasing the allocated resources for a specific VM without prior investigation is professionally unsound. This bypasses the diagnostic process and could lead to overprovisioning, wasting resources, and potentially masking the true underlying issue. It fails to adhere to the principle of efficient resource management and could violate internal policies regarding resource allocation. Another incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the application logs without considering the underlying infrastructure. While application logs are important, performance issues in a virtualized environment are often rooted in resource contention or misconfiguration at the hypervisor level. Ignoring the vSphere layer means missing potential causes like host CPU saturation, insufficient memory, or disk I/O limitations, which are directly within the scope of vSphere 6. 5 Foundations. This demonstrates a failure to apply a holistic troubleshooting methodology. Finally, randomly rebooting VMs or hosts without a clear hypothesis or diagnostic evidence is a reactive and potentially disruptive strategy. This approach lacks a systematic basis, can lead to further instability, and does not address the root cause. It represents a failure to exercise professional judgment and could be seen as negligent if it leads to data loss or extended downtime. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured troubleshooting methodology. This typically involves 1. Defining the problem clearly, 2. Gathering information, logs, metrics, user reports, 3. Identifying potential causes, 4. Testing hypotheses systematically, 5. Implementing solutions and verifying their effectiveness, 6. Documenting the process and outcome. In a vSphere environment, this means leveraging the monitoring and performance tools provided by vSphere to understand resource utilization and identify bottlenecks before making any changes. Question 8. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a critical business application running on a vSphere 6.5 environment is experiencing intermittent performance degradation, leading to user complaints and potential business impact. The application is hosted on a virtual machine within a cluster of XC hosts. Initial user reports suggest slow response times and occasional unresponsiveness. Which of the following approaches is the most appropriate initial step to diagnose and resolve this performance issue? Option A. Focus troubleshooting efforts solely on the application's configuration and code, assuming the underlying infrastructure is performing optimally. Option B. Immediately increase the CPU and memory resources allocated to the virtual machine to ensure it has sufficient capacity. Option C. Analyze vSphere performance metrics for the affected virtual machine, its host, and the cluster to identify resource contention or bottlenecks. Option D. Migrate the virtual machine to a different XC host within the cluster, hoping to alleviate the performance issue. The correct answer is C. Analyze vSphere performance metrics for the affected virtual machine, its host, and the cluster to identify resource contention or bottlenecks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized environments where resource contention can impact application performance and availability. Professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of performance degradation without disrupting ongoing operations or making assumptions that could lead to incorrect remediation. The need for a systematic approach is paramount, as a hasty or misinformed decision could exacerbate the problem or introduce new risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a methodical investigation using vSphere's built-in performance monitoring tools. This aligns with best professional practices for system administration and troubleshooting. By examining metrics such as CPU ready time, memory ballooning, and disk latency at the host, cluster, and VM levels, administrators can pinpoint the specific resource bottleneck. This data-driven approach is crucial for identifying the actual cause of the performance issue, which is essential for effective problem resolution and maintaining service-level agreements, SLAs. This aligns with the general principles of IT service management and operational excellence expected in a professional setting. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately increasing the resources allocated to the affected virtual machine without proper investigation. This is a reactive measure that fails to address the underlying cause. It can lead to inefficient resource utilization, potentially starving other VMs, and may not resolve the performance issue if the bottleneck lies elsewhere, e.g., network or storage. Ethically, this could be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence in managing shared resources. Another incorrect approach is to assume the issue is with the application itself and focus solely on application-level troubleshooting. While application issues can cause performance degradation, ignoring the underlying infrastructure's health is a significant oversight. This approach risks misdiagnosing the problem and wasting valuable time and resources on an ineffective solution. It represents a failure to consider the interconnectedness of the IT environment. A third incorrect approach is to immediately migrate the virtual machine to another host without understanding the cause of the performance issue. While migration can sometimes alleviate temporary resource contention, it does not solve the root problem. If the issue is widespread within the cluster or related to shared storage, migration might simply move the problem or create new ones. This approach lacks a diagnostic component and can be seen as a superficial fix. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured troubleshooting methodology. This typically involves 1. Defining the problem clearly, 2. Gathering information using appropriate tools, 3. Analyzing the data to identify the root cause, 4. Developing and implementing a solution, 5. Verifying the solution and monitoring for recurrence. In this case, leveraging vSphere's performance monitoring capabilities is the critical step in gathering information and analyzing data to identify the root cause of performance degradation. Question 9. Assessment of the most effective initial diagnostic strategy for a user reporting intermittent application slowness within a vSphere 6.5 environment, where the cause is suspected to be resource contention on the underlying XC hosts. Option A. Begin troubleshooting the physical network infrastructure connecting the XC hosts. Option B. Utilize vSphere's performance monitoring tools to analyze CPU ready times, memory ballooning, disk latency, and network throughput for the affected virtual machines and their hosts. Option C. Immediately migrate the affected virtual machines to different XC hosts within the cluster. Option D. Increase the allocated vCPUs and RAM for the affected virtual machines. The correct answer is B. Utilize vSphere's performance monitoring tools to analyze CPU ready times, memory ballooning, disk latency, and network throughput for the affected virtual machines and their hosts. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized environments where resource contention can impact application performance and user experience. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of performance degradation without disrupting critical services or making unsubstantiated changes. It requires a systematic approach to data gathering and analysis, balancing immediate troubleshooting needs with long-term system stability and adherence to established operational procedures. The urgency of a performance issue, especially in a production environment, can lead to hasty decisions, making a structured, evidence-based approach paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging vSphere's built-in performance monitoring tools to gather objective data on resource utilization, CPU, memory, disk, network, across the affected virtual machines and the underlying hosts. Analyzing this data to identify patterns of contention, such as consistently high CPU ready times, memory ballooning or swapping, or disk latency, is crucial. Correlating these metrics with the timing of the reported performance issues allows for precise identification of the bottleneck. This data-driven methodology aligns with best practices for IT operations, emphasizing root cause analysis before implementing solutions. It ensures that any proposed remediation steps are targeted and effective, minimizing the risk of introducing new problems or causing unnecessary downtime. This approach is professionally sound, as it relies on verifiable evidence to guide decision-making, a cornerstone of responsible system administration. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately migrate the affected virtual machines to different hosts without first gathering performance data. This is a reactive measure that might temporarily alleviate the symptoms, but fails to address the underlying cause of the resource contention. It could lead to the same issue reappearing on the new hosts if the contention is widespread, or if the migration itself introduces new performance overhead. This approach bypasses critical diagnostic steps and is not professionally sound as it relies on guesswork rather than analysis. Another incorrect approach is to arbitrarily increase the resources allocated to the affected virtual machines, e.g., adding more vCPUs or RAM, without understanding the current utilization. This can lead to resource overprovisioning, which is inefficient and can even exacerbate performance issues by increasing scheduling overhead on the host. It also fails to address the root cause if the bottleneck is not directly related to the resources being increased. This method is professionally unacceptable because it is wasteful and lacks a diagnostic basis. A third incorrect approach is to assume the issue is with the network and begin troubleshooting network devices without first examining the vSphere performance metrics. While network issues can cause performance degradation, it's essential to rule out host-level resource contention first, as this is a more common cause of generalized performance problems within vSphere. This approach is flawed because it prematurely focuses on a specific component without a comprehensive assessment of the entire system. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic troubleshooting framework. This begins with clearly defining the problem and its impact. Next, gather relevant data using appropriate tools, in this case, vSphere performance monitoring. Analyze the data to identify potential bottlenecks and hypothesize root causes. Test these hypotheses with targeted actions, starting with the most likely causes identified through data analysis. Document all findings, actions taken, and their outcomes. This iterative process of data collection, analysis, and testing ensures that solutions are effective, efficient, and professionally responsible, minimizing risk and maximizing system stability. Question 10. Comparative studies suggest that when deploying critical business applications within a vSphere 6.5 environment, ensuring consistent and guaranteed access to host resources is paramount. Which of the following methods best achieves this objective by providing a baseline level of CPU and memory for these essential virtual machines, even under heavy host load? Option A. Disabling all resource management settings for the host hosting the critical virtual machines. Option B. Distributing the critical virtual machines across multiple physical hosts without specific resource allocation settings. Option C. Assigning high shares to the critical virtual machines within their respective resource pools. Option D. Configuring resource pools with CPU and memory reservations for the critical virtual machines. The correct answer is D. Configuring resource pools with CPU and memory reservations for the critical virtual machines. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized environments, ensuring consistent and reliable access to critical resources across a distributed infrastructure. The professional challenge lies in balancing performance, availability, and manageability while adhering to the foundational principles of vSphere 6.5. Careful judgment is required to select the most appropriate method for resource allocation that aligns with the exam's focus on core vSphere concepts. The correct approach, which involves configuring resource pools to guarantee a minimum level of CPU and memory for specific virtual machines, represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the need for predictable performance and availability. Resource pools, as a fundamental vSphere construct, allow for the hierarchical organization and allocation of resources. By setting reservations, administrators ensure that these critical VMs receive a guaranteed share of host resources, even during periods of high contention. This aligns with the vSphere 6.5 Foundation's exam's emphasis on understanding and implementing core resource management features for optimal virtual machine performance and stability. An incorrect approach that involves simply assigning virtual machines to different hosts without explicit resource management would fail to guarantee resource availability. This could lead to performance degradation for critical applications if other VMs on the same host consume excessive resources, violating the principle of predictable performance. Another incorrect approach, such as relying solely on shares without reservations, offers relative prioritization but not guaranteed minimums, making it unsuitable for critical workloads where absolute minimums are essential. A third incorrect approach, disabling resource management entirely, would leave critical VMs vulnerable to resource starvation and unpredictable performance, directly contradicting the goals of a well-managed virtual infrastructure. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific requirements of the workloads, e.g., critical vs. non-critical. This is followed by an assessment of available vSphere features and their suitability for meeting those requirements. For guaranteed resource allocation, resource pools with reservations are the most direct and effective solution within the vSphere 6.5 framework. The decision process should prioritize solutions that offer predictable outcomes and align with the foundational principles of virtualization management as covered in the 2V0-602 exam. Question 11. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a critical security vulnerability has been identified in a component of the vSphere 6.5 environment, with a potential for significant data compromise and service disruption. The IT team is concerned about the impact of applying the patch on system availability during business hours. Which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to address this vulnerability? Option A. Schedule a maintenance window during off-peak hours to apply the critical patch after thorough testing in a lab environment. Option B. Ignore the vulnerability until a user reports a specific issue related to it. Option C. Defer patching indefinitely, citing concerns about potential downtime, and rely on existing security measures. Option D. Immediately apply the patch to all production systems without any prior testing to ensure rapid mitigation. The correct answer is A. Schedule a maintenance window during off-peak hours to apply the critical patch after thorough testing in a lab environment. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining system availability and implementing necessary security patches. The vSphere 6.5 Foundation's exam focuses on core virtualization concepts, and understanding the impact of security vulnerabilities on a virtualized environment is crucial. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for operational continuity with the long-term risk posed by unpatched systems, requiring a nuanced decision-making process that considers both technical and potential compliance implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and risk-based strategy for patch management. This aligns with best practices for system administration and security, emphasizing the principle of least privilege and defense in depth. By prioritizing patches based on their criticality and potential impact, administrators can mitigate the most significant risks first while minimizing disruption. This approach is professionally sound as it demonstrates due diligence in protecting the virtual infrastructure from known threats, thereby safeguarding data integrity and service availability. It also implicitly supports the operational requirements of a vSphere environment by ensuring its resilience against common attack vectors. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves delaying patching indefinitely due to concerns about downtime. This is professionally unacceptable because it exposes the vSphere environment to known vulnerabilities, increasing the risk of security breaches, data loss, and service disruption. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this inaction constitutes negligence, as it fails to uphold the responsibility to protect the infrastructure and its data from foreseeable threats. Another incorrect approach is to apply all patches immediately without any form of testing or validation. While seemingly proactive, this can lead to unforeseen compatibility issues, system instability, or even complete outages, which is counterproductive to maintaining a stable vSphere environment. This approach lacks professional rigor as it bypasses essential quality assurance steps, potentially causing more harm than good and failing to demonstrate a controlled and measured response to security updates. A third incorrect approach is to only patch systems that are actively experiencing issues. This reactive strategy is insufficient for comprehensive security management. It ignores the silent threats that vulnerabilities pose, allowing potential entry points for attackers to remain unaddressed. Professionally, this demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to implement a robust security posture, leaving the environment vulnerable to widespread compromise. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to patch management. This involves establishing a regular patching schedule, categorizing patches by severity, e.g., critical, important, moderate, and testing patches in a non-production environment before deploying them to production. A risk assessment should inform the prioritization of patching efforts, considering factors such as the exploitability of the vulnerability, the potential impact on business operations, and the availability of workarounds. Communication with stakeholders regarding planned maintenance windows and potential impacts is also a critical component of professional practice. Question 12. To address the challenge of ensuring consistent application performance and meeting service level agreements, SLAs, in a vSphere 6.5 environment with multiple virtual machines competing for shared resources, which of the following approaches best demonstrates proactive and effective resource management? Option A. Disable all resource management features within vSphere to allow virtual machines to consume resources freely as needed. Option B. Increase the allocated CPU and memory for all virtual machines to ensure they have ample resources, regardless of their actual utilization. Option C. Ignore resource contention alerts from vCenter server and only investigate performance issues when end users report problems. Option D. Implement resource pools with appropriate shares and reservations to prioritize critical applications and guarantee minimum resource availability during periods of contention. The correct answer is D. Implement resource pools with appropriate shares and reservations to prioritize critical applications and guarantee minimum resource availability during periods of contention. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge in managing virtual machine resource allocation within a vSphere 6.5 environment, specifically concerning the impact of resource contention on application performance and the potential for service level agreement (SLA) violations. The core difficulty lies in balancing the needs of different applications and their respective business criticality against the finite resources of the underlying physical infrastructure. Without a clear understanding of resource utilization and contention, administrators risk degrading performance for critical services, leading to financial penalties, reputational damage, and user dissatisfaction. Careful judgment is required to implement a resource management strategy that is both effective and compliant with internal policies and external SLAs. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the root cause of potential performance issues by proactively identifying and mitigating resource contention. By leveraging vSphere's built-in resource management features, such as resource pools and shares, administrators can establish a tiered system of resource prioritization. This ensures that high-priority applications receive the necessary CPU and memory resources even during periods of high demand, thereby maintaining performance and meeting SLA commitments. This aligns with the professional responsibility to ensure the stability and performance of the virtualized infrastructure, which is a fundamental aspect of vSphere administration. An incorrect approach that involves simply increasing the allocated resources for all virtual machines without proper analysis is professionally unacceptable. This is because it leads to inefficient resource utilization, potentially over-provisioning resources that are not actively being used, and can mask underlying contention issues rather than resolving them. It also fails to acknowledge the principle of shared resources in a virtualized environment and can lead to unnecessary hardware costs. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore resource contention alerts and only react when users report performance issues, represents a failure in proactive system management. This reactive stance can lead to prolonged periods of degraded performance, impacting business operations and potentially causing SLA breaches. It demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to uphold the professional duty of maintaining a healthy and performant infrastructure. A third incorrect approach, which is to disable resource management features to allow virtual machines to consume resources as needed, is also professionally unsound. While this might seem like a simple solution to avoid contention, it negates the benefits of virtualization and resource management. It can lead to uncontrolled resource consumption, where less critical VMs can starve critical ones, leading to unpredictable performance and potential instability. This approach abandons the core principles of efficient resource allocation and can lead to a noisy neighbor problem, where one VM's excessive resource usage negatively impacts others. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous cycle of monitoring, analysis, and adjustment. First, establish clear performance baselines and understand the resource requirements of critical applications. Second, utilize vSphere's resource management tools to configure resource pools, shares, limits, and reservations to align with business priorities. Third, actively monitor resource utilization and contention metrics, paying close attention to CPU ready time, memory ballooning, and swap usage. Fourth, when performance issues arise or are predicted, analyze the root cause using the collected data and adjust resource configurations accordingly. Finally, document all changes and their impact to refine future resource management strategies. Question 13. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in latency for a critical application running within a virtual machine. While the application team reports no recent code changes, the vSphere host hosting this VM also exhibits elevated CPU and memory utilization, though not consistently at critical levels. Other VMs on the same host appear to be performing normally. What is the most appropriate initial step to diagnose the root cause of the application's performance degradation? Option A. Focus on tuning the guest operating system's network and disk I/O settings to optimize application performance. Option B. Investigate and potentially reconfigure the virtual machine's network adapter settings and the physical network switch ports it connects to. Option C. Immediately migrate the virtual machine to a different vSphere host with lower resource utilization. Option D. Analyze the vSphere host's resource utilization, CPU, memory, network, storage, and compare it with the specific virtual machine's resource consumption and performance counters. The correct answer is D. Analyze the vSphere host's resource utilization, CPU, memory, network, storage, and compare it with the specific virtual machine's resource consumption and performance counters. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized environments, identifying the root cause of performance degradation when multiple factors could be at play. The professional challenge lies in systematically troubleshooting without disrupting other critical services or making assumptions that could lead to incorrect remediation. Careful judgment is required to balance the need for immediate resolution with the potential impact of any changes. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it follows a structured, evidence-based methodology. By first examining the vSphere host's resource utilization, CPU, memory, network, storage, and then correlating it with the specific virtual machine's performance, it allows for the isolation of the problem to either the host infrastructure or the guest operating system and its applications. This systematic approach aligns with IT best practices for incident management and problem resolution, ensuring that changes are made based on data rather than speculation. It minimizes the risk of introducing new issues or exacerbating existing ones. An incorrect approach that immediately focuses on guest OS tuning without first validating host resources fails to adhere to a logical troubleshooting hierarchy. This could lead to wasted effort if the bottleneck is actually at the hypervisor or hardware level. It also risks making guest-level changes that are ineffective or even detrimental if the underlying infrastructure is the true culprit. Ethically, this approach could be seen as unprofessional if it leads to prolonged downtime or performance issues due to a lack of due diligence. Another incorrect approach, such as immediately migrating the virtual machine to another host without proper investigation, bypasses the opportunity to understand the root cause. A migration might temporarily alleviate the symptom. It doesn't solve the underlying problem and could simply shift the issue to another host, potentially impacting other workloads. This reactive measure, without diagnostic steps, is not a sustainable or professional solution. It fails to address the core issue and could lead to repeated performance problems. A further incorrect approach, such as assuming a network issue and immediately reconfiguring network settings on the host or VM, is also problematic. Without evidence pointing to network saturation or errors, such changes are speculative. This can lead to unintended network disruptions for other VMs or services sharing the same network infrastructure. It demonstrates a lack of methodical problem solving and could violate operational procedures that require documented evidence before making significant configuration changes. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the reported symptoms and their impact. 2. Gathering initial data, performance metrics from vSphere guest OS and potentially application logs. 3. Establishing a baseline, understanding normal performance levels. 4. Formulating hypotheses, identifying potential causes based on the data. 5. Testing hypotheses systematically, starting with the most likely or impactful layer, e.g., host resources, then VM resources, then guest OS, then application. 6. Implementing changes cautiously, making one change at a time and observing the impact. 7. Documenting all steps and findings. 8. Escalating if necessary with clear data and analysis. Question 14. The efficiency study reveals that several critical virtual machines are experiencing intermittent performance degradation, impacting user productivity. The vSphere 6.5 environment shows no obvious host-level hardware failures, but resource utilization metrics for some VMs are consistently high during peak hours. The IT manager is seeking a recommendation on the most appropriate next step to diagnose and resolve these performance issues. Option A. Focus exclusively on reviewing the application logs of the affected virtual machines for error messages. Option B. Arbitrarily increase the CPU and memory limits for the affected virtual machines without further investigation. Option C. Analyze vSphere performance metrics for CPU, memory, disk, and network utilization at both the VM and host levels to identify resource bottlenecks. Option D. Immediately recommend the purchase of additional physical server hardware to alleviate potential resource constraints. The correct answer is C. Analyze vSphere performance metrics for CPU, memory, disk, and network utilization at both the VM and host levels to identify resource bottlenecks. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized environments where resource contention can impact application performance and user experience. The professional is tasked with identifying the root cause of performance degradation. The challenge lies in distinguishing between genuine resource limitations and misconfigurations or suboptimal settings within vSphere 6. 5. A hasty or incorrect diagnosis can lead to unnecessary hardware upgrades, increased operational costs, or further performance issues if the underlying problem is not addressed. Careful analysis of performance metrics and understanding of vSphere resource management principles are crucial. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves systematically analyzing the performance metrics provided by vSphere 6.5 to pinpoint the bottleneck. This includes examining CPU, memory, disk, and network utilization at both the virtual machine and host levels, understanding the behavior of these resources under load, and correlating them with application performance is key. For instance, high CPU ready time on a VM might indicate CPU contention, while high disk latency could point to storage I/O issues. This methodical, data-driven approach aligns with best practices for troubleshooting in virtualized environments, ensuring that interventions are targeted and effective, thereby maintaining service levels and operational efficiency as expected by IT governance principles. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately assume a hardware limitation and recommend purchasing additional physical resources without thorough investigation. This fails to adhere to the principle of efficient resource utilization, a core tenet of virtualization. It also bypasses the diagnostic process, potentially wasting organizational capital on unnecessary hardware. Ethically, it represents a failure to act in the best interest of the organization by not exploring all cost-effective solutions first. Another incorrect approach would be to arbitrarily adjust resource allocation settings, e.g., increasing VM CPU or memory limits, without understanding the impact on other VMs or the host. This can lead to resource starvation for other workloads, creating new performance problems and violating the principle of fair resource sharing. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of how vSphere resource scheduling works and can lead to instability. A third incorrect approach would be to focus solely on the application logs without correlating them with vSphere performance metrics. While application logs are important, they may not always reveal the underlying infrastructure issues that are causing the application to perform poorly. This approach fails to consider the entire system and can lead to misdiagnosis, addressing symptoms rather than the root cause. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured troubleshooting methodology. This involves 1. Defining the problem clearly, including symptoms and scope. 2. Gathering relevant data, focusing on vSphere performance metrics, CPU, memory, disk, network, and application logs. 3. Analyzing the data to identify potential bottlenecks and root causes. 4. Formulating hypotheses and testing them systematically. 5. Implementing solutions based on the confirmed root cause. 6. Verifying the effectiveness of the solution and monitoring for recurrence. This process ensures that decisions are evidence-based, cost-effective, and aligned with maintaining a stable and performant virtualized environment. Question 15. The control framework reveals that a newly onboarded system administrator requires immediate access to manage a critical vSphere 6.5 cluster for an urgent operational task. The existing security policy mandates that all administrative access be granted through a documented, approval-based process with time-bound permissions. Which of the following actions best adheres to these requirements and professional best practices? Option A. Grant the administrator access to specific virtual machines within the cluster, but not to the cluster management interface itself. Option B. Grant the administrator full administrative privileges to the cluster indefinitely, pending a formal review at a later date. Option C. Provide the administrator with a set of existing administrative credentials to use for the duration of the task. Option D. Initiate a formal request for temporary administrative access, specifying the required duration and scope, and obtain approval from the designated security officer. Correct answer is B. Grant the administrator full administrative privileges to the cluster indefinitely, pending a formal review at a later date. Explanation. The control framework reveals a common challenge in virtualized environments, ensuring consistent and secure access to resources across a distributed infrastructure. The scenario presents a situation where a new administrator requires elevated privileges to manage a critical vSphere cluster. Professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for access with the imperative to maintain security and compliance, adhering to established operational procedures, and the principle of least privilege. The correct approach involves a structured and documented process for granting temporary elevated access. This typically includes a formal request, justification, approval from a designated authority, and a defined expiration for the elevated privileges. This method aligns with best professional practices by ensuring accountability, auditability, and adherence to security policies. It minimizes the risk of unauthorized access or accidental misconfiguration by limiting the duration and scope of elevated permissions. This approach directly supports the principles of robust access control and operational security, which are fundamental to maintaining the integrity and availability of virtualized resources. An incorrect approach would be to grant permanent administrative access without a thorough review or a defined process. This violates the principle of least privilege, increasing the attack surface and the risk of unauthorized actions. It also bypasses established security protocols, making it difficult to track who made changes and when, which is a significant regulatory and ethical failure in terms of auditability and accountability. Another incorrect approach is to share existing administrative credentials. This is a severe security and ethical breach. It completely undermines the audit trail, as it becomes impossible to determine which individual performed specific actions. This practice is explicitly prohibited by most security frameworks and regulatory guidelines due to the inherent risks of credential compromise and the inability to enforce individual accountability. A third incorrect approach would be to grant access without any form of documentation or approval, relying solely on verbal communication. This lacks any audit trail and bypasses necessary oversight. It creates a significant risk of unauthorized access and makes it impossible to verify the legitimacy of the access granted, leading to potential compliance violations and security vulnerabilities. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes security, compliance, and operational efficiency. This involves understanding the specific requirements of the task, assessing the associated risks, consulting relevant policies and procedures, and obtaining appropriate approvals before granting any level of access, especially elevated privileges. The process should always be documented to ensure an auditable trail. Question 16. Consider a scenario where a company is migrating its customer relationship management (CRM) system, which contains sensitive personally identifiable information (PI), to a vSphere 6.5 environment. The IT team is eager to leverage advanced features like vMotion for seamless live migration of virtual machines to minimize downtime during the migration process. What is the most responsible approach to ensure regulatory compliance regarding the handling of this sensitive data within the new virtual infrastructure? Option A. Focus solely on the technical performance benefits of vSphere 6.5 features like vMotion, assuming that standard vSphere security settings are sufficient to meet all data protection regulatory requirements for sensitive PII. Option B. Proceed with the vSphere 6.5 migration, prioritizing the use of vMotion for minimal downtime, and address data security and regulatory compliance concerns after the system is fully operational. Option C. Deploy the CRM virtual machines without specific encryption or granular access controls, relying on the inherent security of the vSphere 6.5 platform and network segmentation to protect the PII. Option D. Implement robust access controls, data encryption for data at rest and in transit, and comprehensive logging for all access and changes to the CRM virtual machines, while ensuring the vMotion process itself is secured and audited. The correct answer is D. Implement robust access controls, data encryption for data at rest and in transit, and comprehensive logging for all access and changes to the CRM virtual machines, while ensuring the vMotion process itself is secured and audited. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge related to data privacy and security within a virtualized environment, specifically concerning the handling of sensitive customer information. The core difficulty lies in balancing the operational benefits of vSphere 6. 5 features with the imperative to comply with data protection regulations. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to ensure that the implementation and management of virtual infrastructure do not inadvertently expose or compromise protected data. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive understanding of data classification and regulatory requirements before implementing technical solutions. By conducting a thorough risk assessment and implementing appropriate security controls aligned with data sensitivity, an organization demonstrates due diligence in protecting customer information. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining customer trust and avoiding legal repercussions. Adhering to the principle of least privilege and ensuring data encryption at rest and in transit are fundamental security best practices that directly support regulatory compliance objectives. An incorrect approach that involves deploying vSphere 6. 5 features without considering the nature of the data being processed would represent a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Specifically, it could lead to violations of data protection laws by failing to implement adequate safeguards for sensitive information. For instance, storing unencrypted personally identifiable information, PI, on virtual disks without proper access controls would be a direct breach of privacy principles. Another failure would be to overlook the importance of audit trails and logging, which are essential for demonstrating compliance and investigating potential security incidents. Without these, an organization cannot prove it has taken reasonable steps to protect data, leading to potential fines and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Data classification. Understand the types of data being handled and their sensitivity levels. 2. Regulatory mapping. Identify all applicable data protection regulations and their specific requirements. 3. Risk assessment. Evaluate the potential risks associated with storing and processing data within the vSphere environment, considering both technical vulnerabilities and regulatory noncompliance. 4. Control implementation. Design and implement security controls that directly address identified risks and meet regulatory mandates. This includes access controls, encryption, logging, and regular security audits. 5. Continuous monitoring and review. Regularly review and update security measures to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory changes. Question 17. System analysis indicates that a critical vSphere 6.5 environment requires an urgent upgrade to address known security vulnerabilities and performance issues. The IT team has identified a suitable upgrade path, but the implementation will necessitate a brief period of planned downtime for the virtual machines. The primary stakeholders include the finance department, which relies heavily on the virtualized environment for daily transaction processing, and the sales team, whose customer relationship management (CRM) system runs on these VMs. The IT manager is concerned about potential disruption to critical business functions and user productivity during the upgrade window. What is the most professional and effective approach to manage this situation? Option A. Inform all affected departments of the planned upgrade, its necessity, the expected downtime and mitigation strategies well in advance, and schedule the upgrade during a period of minimal business activity. Option B. Delay the upgrade indefinitely until a perfect, zero downtime solution can be found, to avoid any potential user complaints or operational disruptions. Option C. Proceed with the upgrade immediately during business hours to minimize the overall duration of the upgrade process, assuming users will adapt to temporary interruptions. Option D. Post a general notification on the company intranet about a system maintenance event, without specifying the exact nature or impact, and hope for the best. The correct answer is A. Inform all affected departments of the planned upgrade, its necessity, the expected downtime and mitigation strategies well in advance, and schedule the upgrade during a period of minimal business activity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT infrastructure management where a critical system upgrade is required, but the immediate impact on end users and business operations is a significant concern. The challenge lies in balancing the need for technological advancement and security patching with the imperative to maintain business continuity and user productivity. The pressure to complete the upgrade quickly, coupled with potential resistance from stakeholders who may not fully grasp the technical necessity or risks of inaction, requires a carefully considered and communicative approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes clear, proactive communication and stakeholder engagement. By informing all affected parties well in advance about the planned upgrade, its necessity, potential impacts, and mitigation strategies, the IT team demonstrates professionalism and respect for the business operations. This aligns with best practices in IT service management, which emphasize minimizing disruption and managing user expectations. In a regulated environment, such transparency also supports auditability and demonstrates due diligence in managing IT assets and risks. This approach fosters trust and collaboration, making the upgrade process smoother and reducing potential negative repercussions. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the upgrade without adequate notification. This is professionally unacceptable because it disregards the impact on users and business operation, potentially leading to significant productivity losses, user frustration, and a breakdown of trust between IT and other departments. Ethically, it fails to uphold the principle of minimizing harm and disruption. Another incorrect approach is to delay the upgrade indefinitely due to fear of user complaints. This is professionally unsound, as it exposes the organization to security vulnerabilities and potential system instability, which can have far more severe consequences than temporary user inconvenience. It represents a failure to manage risk effectively and to uphold the IT department's responsibility for maintaining a secure and stable environment. A third incorrect approach is to implement the upgrade during peak business hours without any prior warning, assuming users will adapt. This is a severe professional and ethical lapse. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of business processes and a disregard for the productivity of the organization. Such an action could lead to significant financial losses and damage the reputation of the IT department. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured approach to system upgrades. This involves 1. Risk assessment, understanding the technical necessity and potential risks of not upgrading. 2. Impact analysis, identifying all stakeholders and the potential impact on their operations. 3. Communication plan, developing a clear and timely communication strategy tailored to different stakeholder groups. 4. Scheduling, proposing upgrade windows that minimize business disruption, often outside of core business hours. 5. Mitigation and rollback, having contingency plans in place including rollback procedures to address unforeseen issues. 6. Post-implementation review, assessing the success of the upgrade and gathering feedback. This systematic process ensures that technical requirements are met while prioritizing business continuity and stakeholder satisfaction. Question 18. Upon reviewing the performance metrics for a critical business application running on vSphere 6.5, it is observed that the application is experiencing intermittent slowdowns and high latency, impacting user productivity. The application is known to be CPU intensive and requires consistent processing power to function optimally. The vSphere environment hosts several other virtual machines with varying resource demands. What is the most effective approach to ensure the critical application receives the necessary CPU resources without negatively impacting other workloads? Option A. Increase the number of virtual CPUs assigned to the critical application's virtual machine significantly, assuming more vCPUs will always equate to better performance. Option B. Disable all CPU resource controls for the critical application's virtual machine to allow it unrestricted access to host CPU resources. Option C. Focus solely on increasing the allocated RAM for the critical application's virtual machine, as memory is often the primary bottleneck for application performance. Option D. Configure shares, reservations, and limits for the critical application's virtual machine to prioritize its CPU access and guarantee a minimum allocation, while also capping its maximum consumption. The correct answer is D. Configure shares, reservations, and limits for the critical application's virtual machine to prioritize its CPU access and guarantee a minimum allocation, while also capping its maximum consumption. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in virtualized environments where resource allocation and performance are critical. The professional is tasked with ensuring that a critical application, which is known to be sensitive to latency and processing power, receives adequate resources without negatively impacting other virtual machines. The challenge lies in balancing the needs of a specific, high-priority workload with the overall stability and performance of the vSphere environment, all while adhering to established best practices for resource management. This requires a deep understanding of vSphere resource controls and their implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves utilizing vSphere's resource allocation features, specifically shares, reservations, and limits, to guarantee the required performance for the critical application. Shares provide a relative priority, ensuring that in contention, the critical application receives a larger proportion of resources. Reservations guarantee a minimum amount of resources, preventing other VMs from consuming them. Limits cap the maximum resources a VM can consume, preventing it from monopolizing the host. This combination ensures both guaranteed minimums and appropriate prioritization, aligning with the principle of ensuring critical services are always available and performant, a fundamental tenet of IT infrastructure management, and often implicitly or explicitly required by business continuity and service level agreements, SLAs. Incorrect approaches analysis. Simply increasing the number of virtual CPUs, vCPU, assigned to the critical application without considering the host's physical resources or the impact on other VMs is a flawed approach. This can lead to CPU overcommitment, where the total number of vCPUs assigned exceeds the available physical CPU cores, resulting in increased scheduling overhead and reduced performance for all VMs, including the critical one. This violates the principle of efficient resource utilization and can lead to performance degradation, failing to meet the application's requirements. Disabling resource controls entirely for the critical application is also problematic. While it might seem like it grants the application unrestricted access, it removes any mechanism to prevent it from consuming excessive resources, potentially starving other essential VMs on the host. This can lead to instability in the vSphere environment and violate the principle of fair resource distribution, potentially impacting other business-critical services. Focusing solely on increasing memory for the critical application, while important, neglects the CPU performance requirements. If the application is CPU-bound, simply adding more RAM will not resolve its performance issues and could lead to inefficient resource allocation if the CPU is the bottleneck. This demonstrates a lack of a holistic approach to resource management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach resource allocation challenges by first understanding the specific performance requirements of the application. This involves consulting with application owners and reviewing performance metrics. Next, they should assess the current resource utilization of the vSphere host and other virtual machines. Based on this information, they can then strategically apply vSphere resource controls, shares, reservation, limits to prioritize and guarantee resources for critical applications while ensuring overall environment stability. This systematic, data-driven approach, combined with an understanding of vSphere's capabilities, is essential for effective IT infrastructure management. Question 19. Compliance review shows that a new vSphere 6.5 feature is being considered for deployment. To ensure the security and stability of the virtualized environment, what is the most appropriate approach for assessing the potential risks associated with this new feature? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that analyzes the feature's potential impact on security, performance, and availability, and documents mitigation strategies. Option B. Delegate the entire risk assessment process to the IT security team without providing them with specific context about the feature's intended use. Option C. Rely solely on the vendor's security white papers and assume the feature is secure as it is part of the vSphere 6.5 release. Option D. Implement the feature immediately and monitor for any issues that arise, addressing them reactively. Correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that analyzes the feature's potential impact on security, performance, and availability, and documents mitigation strategies. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT risk management, balancing operational efficiency with security and compliance requirements. The professional must identify the most appropriate method for assessing the risk associated with a new vSphere 6. 5 feature, ensuring that the assessment is thorough, documented, and aligns with established best practices for risk management within the context of vSphere 6. 5 foundations. The challenge lies in selecting an approach that is not only technically sound, but also defensible from a compliance and governance perspective. The correct approach involves a structured and systematic risk assessment process that considers the potential impact and likelihood of threats to the vSphere environment. This aligns with the foundational principles of risk management, which are implicitly expected in a foundations-level exam. By performing a detailed analysis of the feature's security implications, potential vulnerabilities, and the impact on business operations, the professional can make informed decisions about mitigation strategies. This proactive and documented approach is best professional practice because it provides a clear audit trail, supports informed decision-making, and demonstrates due diligence in managing IT risks, which is crucial for maintaining a secure and compliant vSphere environment. An incorrect approach would be to bypass a formal risk assessment, perhaps by relying solely on vendor documentation or assuming the feature is inherently secure. This failure to conduct an independent, context-specific risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical lapse. It neglects the responsibility to understand and mitigate risks unique to the organization's specific deployment and operational environment. Another incorrect approach might be to focus only on the technical implementation without considering the broader business impact or potential compliance implications. This narrow focus can lead to overlooking critical risks that could affect data integrity, availability, or regulatory adherence. A third incorrect approach could be to delegate the entire risk assessment to a vendor without independent verification or internal review, which abdicates the organization's responsibility for risk ownership. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the scope and objectives of the assessment. They should then identify relevant threats and vulnerabilities, analyze the potential impact and likelihood of these risks, and evaluate existing controls. Based on this analysis, they should determine appropriate mitigation strategies and document the entire process. This iterative and documented approach ensures that risks are managed effectively and that the organization can demonstrate compliance with its own policies and any applicable regulatory requirements. Question 20. Examination of the data shows that a small IT team is responsible for managing a vSphere 6.5 environment with limited budget for security tools. The team needs to implement a risk assessment process to identify and prioritize potential security threats to the virtual infrastructure. Which of the following approaches would be most effective in this situation? Option A. Implement a comprehensive quantitative risk assessment that requires detailed financial data and complex statistical modeling to assign precise monetary values to potential losses. Option B. Focus exclusively on identifying and patching all known vulnerabilities listed in public databases, assuming this will cover all significant risks. Option C. Conduct a qualitative risk assessment that involves identifying critical assets, potential threats, and vulnerabilities, and then assigning subjective ratings for likelihood and impact to prioritize risks. Option D. Rely on the personal experience and intuition of the senior system administrator to identify and rank the most probable risks. Correct answer is C. Conduct a qualitative risk assessment that involves identifying critical assets, potential threats, and vulnerabilities, and then assigning subjective ratings for likelihood and impact to prioritize risks. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT risk management, balancing the need for robust security with operational efficiency and resource constraints. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying and prioritizing risks that could impact the availability, integrity, or confidentiality of vSphere 6.5 environments, particularly when dealing with limited resources. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen risk assessment approach is comprehensive, effective, and aligned with the organization's overall security posture and business objectives. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities, assesses their likelihood and impact, and prioritizes mitigation efforts based on a clear understanding of the risk landscape. This aligns with the foundational principles of risk management, which are implicitly supported by the need for secure and reliable IT infrastructure as outlined in general IT governance best practices, even if not explicitly codified in a specific vSphere 6. 5 Foundations regulation. A structured, repeatable process ensures that critical risks are not overlooked and that resources are allocated effectively to address the most significant threats. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on known vulnerabilities without considering the broader threat landscape or potential impact is professionally unacceptable. This failure to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment can lead to a false sense of security, leaving the organization exposed to unforeseen threats. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes low-impact risks over high-impact ones, perhaps due to ease of remediation, is also professionally unsound. This misallocation of resources can leave critical systems vulnerable. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal opinion rather than a structured methodology lacks objectivity and can lead to biased decision-making, failing to adequately protect the organization's assets. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with defining the scope of the risk assessment, identifying assets and their criticality, and then systematically identifying threats and vulnerabilities. This should be followed by analyzing the likelihood and impact of identified risks, evaluating existing controls, and determining the residual risk. Finally, mitigation strategies should be developed and prioritized, and the entire process should be documented and reviewed regularly. This structured approach ensures that risk management is a continuous and proactive process rather than a reactive one.